Now, welcome. It is so lovely to see people here. It's wonderful to have such an audience. And it's very exciting to be able to get ARPIA up and running again and to be able to celebrate our industry by having people together. And so even if this does turn out to be a super spreader event, it was really lovely to see you all here before all the horrible things happened. I want to acknowledge that we are meeting on the lands of the Kulin Nation and pay my respects to elders past and present. I extend that respect to Aboriginal and Torres Strait Islanders here today. And I also want to recognise that the negotiations towards a treaty in Victoria is coming to sort of really critical negotiation points. And I think this is a wonderful thing if it can be achieved. And so I also wish sort of courage and resilience to those people who are trying to bring this to some sort of recognition and to establish that treaty. And I hope it is something which our state can be proud of and can be a significant step towards reconciliation. Now, I suppose this is also a great time to thank our sponsors, Chaosium, and Michael up the back here being the principal representative of Chaosium. So thank you, Michael. The Quest suppliers, and also Chris here. So thank you to the Quest suppliers. Now, also, Galen has provided us has created the prize for Game of the Year, and I can't show you that yet because it's engraved with the winner. So, and he did ask me at
hand over the name.
Yes, he asked me at Conquest, which we've just been, many of us have been at for the last 2 days, which was a great event. But he did ask me if he could display it. And I said, no, absolutely not. Nobody is meant to know yet. So just as well he asked, and I'm sure he wouldn't have otherwise. And so our keynote speaker for tonight, Craig, who we also know as M.T.Black, a prominent games writer in Australia and arguably the best known amongst the world community in terms of his hugely successful Dungeons and Dragons scenarios that he's written, and also just recently a really creative. The game he was running at Conquest. You were there battling fascist vampires in an extremely alternative World War II, and he still calls it Dungeons and Dragons, but I don't know that there were ever any Dungeons or any Dragons. But I'll hand over to Craig. When Craig's had a chance to speak, I'll then start the award ceremony.
Okay. Thank you so much. And I'll echo John's words. It's so great to have this crew back together and to see some new faces here as well. And it's funny getting asked to do a keynote speech, what that will look like. There's a whole bunch of visions passed through my mind. And the atmosphere here is probably a little bit more festive and liquid than I was thinking in my mind. Some of this may have been a bit heavier than is appropriate. I might do a bit of editing as I go, just to. I don't want to stretch us. It's Sunday night. We've all been drinking. It's a good time. I started playing role-playing games in 1983, nearly 40 years ago, and I've always been keenly interested in the commercial side of the hobby. And I can tell you that over the last 40 years, there's been some times when it has seemed as if the whole industry was just about to disintegrate, just about to fold up. It really has been. And so it's actually been surprising and thrilling to see the recent growth in the role-playing game industry, which is now bigger than it's ever been. Is it really? let me share some stats with you might not be aware of. 2013, the trade magazine, ICV2, put the North American RPG market at $15 million. For the year 2020, they estimated the market at $105 million. That's sevenfold growth in 7 years. Here's a statistic that just staggers me. Between 2009 and 2020 Kickstarter, there were just 4 RPG projects that passed $1 million in Kickstarter funding. In the year 2021 alone, there were 11 tabletop RPG projects that surpassed $1 million in funding. In the last week, there have been 2 tabletop RPG projects that have launched and funded over $1 million within a few days. One of those was Old Gods of Appalachia by Monty Cook. The other one was Flea Mortals by Matt Colville. Let's talk about the 800-pound gorilla. Wizards of the Coast now claim over 50 million D&D players worldwide. And the company, Wizards of the Coast, now accounts for more than 70% of the profits of Hasbro, the second biggest toy maker in the world. This is not an estimate, this is from the Hasbro earnings call. Okay. You might say, oh, that's all Magic the Gathering. Well, we know D&D's worth some money. Hasbro just bought a set of D&D digital tools called D&D Beyond last week. They paid $146 million for dndbeyond.com, okay? There's some money here. Now, Australian stats are much harder to come by, as you'll appreciate, but Creative Victoria did a survey of Australian RPG game creators a few months ago. About 50 people or companies responded. They reported a combined income of over $10 million for 2020 and 2021. These are numbers we probably couldn't have imagined 10 years ago in this industry. All this growth, all this wealth, this raises an obvious question to the people in this room. How do you increase your share of the pie? Sorry to be blunt, but I think it's a legitimate question. You're not a bunch of coal barons looking for another $1 billion. The game designers have some of the highest levels of income insecurity of any group that I've actually seen. So anything we can do to make the situation a bit better, I think is a legitimate question. So, and we shouldn't be embarrassed to talk about the commercial side of things. To provide a little bit of the answer, which is what I'm talking about tonight, I hope you'll indulge me as I speak a little bit about my own experience as a indie publisher. I've only been publishing since about 2016. I got my start on the DMs Guild, which is the official D&D community content platform. Now, if you looked at my products in early 2016, you would not have said, this guy is going to one day sell 100,000 books on that platform, I promise you. You know, I was selling a few copies a week. I wasn't making the top 10, I wasn't making the top 20, I wasn't making the top 30. And I looked at people who were selling well and thinking, they're a different breed. I'm doing my thing, they're doing something different. By the end of the year, I'd written 14 small adventures. I decided to do something different. They were all selling for $1 or $2 each. I bundled them up into a book I called The Complete Adventures of M.T.Black, put a $10 price tag on it, hit publish, went to bed. Got up the next morning, wonder how this has gone, looking up the charts, bang, hit number 1, stayed there for 5 months. It was in the top 10, it was in the top, oh, thank you. It was in the top. I know that sounds like the biggest humble brag. I'm sorry. It was in the top 10 for nearly 2 years, and sold over 10,000 copies. But perhaps more importantly, it opened up a whole bunch of doors for me. Success opens doors. You look down the hall, the doors all opened up as soon as I'd had a big hit. Here's the thing I want you to notice about that, though. Okay, and it's a hard truth. The adventures are all competent. I didn't make any game design changes to achieve these dramatically different results, all right? I didn't go and tinker them and now everyone's buying them. Okay, what I'd done was implement a marketing technique, which I didn't realise, called a sales promotion. I'd achieved greater sales by marketing the game better, not by making the game better. Ugh, that hurts, doesn't it? It hurts, I can say it again, come on. I achieved greater results by marketing the game better, not by making the game better. And it's a lesson we need to learn. What was probably more interesting than all of that, though, was the response of the creator community I was a part of at the time. And most people were cool, you know, they were like, yeah, let's chat about this. How do we sell our products? But there were a couple of people who were aggressively anti anything to do with marketing. Okay, and they tried very hard to convince me not to market things in RPG marketplaces. They tried very hard to convince other people to avoid marketing. Even something as simple as and obvious as bundling up your adventures. And as I've progressed in my career, I've encountered this attitude amongst indie game designers, some, and I consider myself part of that breed, time and again. They're serious about their craft. They think people should be paid, but there's an absolute allergy to anything to do with marketing. And often they want to actually discourage others from doing marketing as well. There's a couple of objections they bring up, and in some ways there's some legitimacy to them. I just want to deal with those very quickly, though. First, there's this idea that marketing is just an implicitly dishonest exercise to engage in. Years ago, the ABC had a program called The Checkout, which was a consumer affairs program. They had a segment called Package versus Product. They take something off the shelf at Woolies or whatever, and they'd show you a sumptuous feast on the packaging. Then they'd open that up, and the product inside looked like dog vomit. It looked absolutely horrible. For a lot of people, this is the essence of marketing. It is taking dog vomit and trying to make it look pretty. And for some folk, to market your own game it's almost like you're implicitly admitting that you're selling dog vomit, as well as cheating, the customer. Probably in response, I just want to say that marketing can be done in a good way or a bad way, a moral way or an immoral way. You can be sleazy or you can be noble. You can use marketing to deceive, you can use it to enlighten. Like many things, it can be turned to good or bad. Now, the second objection is this idea that marketing distorts the natural economy of the industry, the RPG industry. And what I mean is, if the dog vomit game is getting elevated up to the top 10 through a slick marketing campaign, presumably the worthy game is getting pushed down as well. People object to that idea. The assumption underlying that, though, is that if you strip away, and this is a little bit complex, but it's really important to understand, that if you strip away all the outside influences, that our marketplaces, our cultural markets like itch.io and DriveThruRPG, will operate as a kind of a meritocracy, where the best games will naturally rise to the top. Well, I can tell you that our social scientists have studied cultural markets now to a degree, and that is absolutely not the case. It's a sad fact. It is absolutely not the case that the quality products rise to the top. There's a fellow, I was going to explain the experiment, but there may be too much grog to do that now, I think. A guy called Matthew Salganik, though, you might look him up, a sociologist. He did some experiments over a massive sample size, 15,000 people, looking at songs, but his conclusions were applicable to books as well. And what he found was the quality of a product is no predictor of its popularity, even when it's released in a vacuum, even when you're in a kind of a platonic ideal of people just being able to engage. It's a hard fact to accept, but the cultural charts he found were effectively random. There was pretty much a random correlation between the quality of product being released and the number of times that product was being purchased or downloaded. So when you're releasing your game onto itch.io, sans any other influence, you are really rolling a dice. Oh, look, I got 23. I hit position 23. And I know that is a hard thing to accept, but the science is pretty solid on this now. These results have been replicated. Now, this might all sound a bit hopeless, and some creators react very, very strongly against these findings. But if we believe what the social science is telling us, what can we do about it? And it's here I believe there's a positive role for marketing, okay? Now, I can't find the source, but someone once said that marketing is the act of putting your product in front of the people who might like to buy your product. Marketing is putting your product in front of the people who might like to buy your product. If we think about it that way, if we behave ethically, then good marketing can be something that benefits the game player almost as much as the game maker. Rather than an act of deception, it becomes an act of communication, maybe an act of community even. The game maker, obviously, you potentially get compensation for all your hard work, very hard to come by, while the game player gets to learn about a game they might like. And as a game player myself, I want all the information I can get about the sort of games that I'm going to love, okay? Now, I'm going to skip over a little digression I had. I'm just about to wrap up. There is a stigma around marketing, and even me saying this word so often, marketing, you're thinking, my God, you know, we understand that. That's part of our wider culture. What I would challenge you to do, though, is to look for opportunities to find the art and the creativity in the marketing journey, okay? 200 years ago, a new marketing device was introduced for books, and every book in the world almost these days uses this device that was introduced to advertise the book. It's called the illustrated book cover. We love our covers, and we see that as part of the creative journey to come up with a great cover. My challenge is to say, how do we look at that whole customer journey from first contact with us as game creators through to lifelong fan who buys everything we have? How do we fold that into it so we're not taking our game creator hat off and putting our soulless bastard marketer hat on, but in fact it's actually part of the entire creative journey. It may take some effort, but I think that is possible. In the same way that putting together a book cover, we don't think, oh, I'm being a soulless marketer now. That's actually an exciting and wonderful part of the process. As an ARPIA judge, and we're coming in now, guys, I've just spent 6 months looking hard at your work, and it is no exaggeration to say it is world class. It is no exaggeration, okay? Yet most of your products, with a few notable exceptions, are missing one crucial thing. What are you missing? Customers. Not enough people are seeing your games, not enough people are buying your games, not enough people are playing your games. I hope this talk will help some of you to reappraise your relationship with marketing, because you deserve to get paid for your work and the world deserves to know about your games. Thank you very much.